What did Kautilya say? Every friendship has got a self-interest. Without self-interest, no friendship is possible. So we should not feel shy in playing a real geopolitics while and see the Indian interest, the national interest, while dealing with Taliban. They have spent $2 trillion here, lost 2,300 men, lost, injured 20,660 soldiers. But two things what they have done, for which now there will be a big tussle, is the Afghans have got a taste of the democracy. If the Afghan national security forces keep on running away from one post after the other and provinces are falling like ripe mangoes into the hands of Taliban, then who is going to listen to these people? Pakistan feels that Afghanistan is their client state. We are superior. That is our state. They will listen to what we say. So the entire Taliban was created by Pakistan. Agreed?
Yes.
It was a baby of Pakistan which went there. Once the Americans came and told these are the people and we have to fight, straight away like a chameleon, Pakistan changed its colors and their own baby, Taliban, they started attacking it. US started giving them logistic support and sealed their borders. So it was actually infanticide which Pakistan was doing to their own baby. Golden opportunity which we had to liberate Afghanistan from the communication lines, strings, leashes from Pakistan. We could not do it.
Hello and welcome to Dev Talks. Today I am privileged and proud to present to you once again Lieutenant General PG Kamath, who's going to talk to us about the topic and the country of Afghanistan. Lieutenant General PG Kamath, PVSM, AVSM, YSM, SM, is an alumni of the Sainik School Bijapur and then, of course, the National Defense Academy. He was commissioned into the Madras Regiment in June 1973. The general has commanded an infantry battalion on the LOC between 1993 and 95. This was at the peak of the insurgency in that area. He commanded an infantry brigade during the Operation Parakram and further a division in the deserts and the Run of Kutch. He was also the defense advisor to the High Commissioner in Malaysia and the additional military secretary at the army headquarters. Today he writes on various different issues concerning the armed forces as well as our nation. Thank you, sir, for giving your time once again to talk to me about this upcoming subject that very few people talk about, Afghanistan.
Thank you, Adi. My privilege.
Sir, to begin the first thing, with the withdrawal of the US forces, which is completely, pretty much finalized on paper as advised by the president of USA on the September 11th this year, how do you see the situation leading up to the time of the withdrawal of the forces in Afghanistan within that country? And how do you think the Taliban in particular would behave during this time?
Adi, just I want to give you a bit of introduction to Afghanistan. Over a period of in the history, Afghanistan has been called as the roundabout in history. It is on crossroads linking the Middle East, linking the Central Asian Republic, South Asia, and China all together. Over a period of time in history, the Persians have come and gone, the Greeks have come and gone, the Mauryas have come and gone, the Mughals have come and gone, the Sikh Empire has come and gone, the British have come twice and gone, and the Russians have come and gone. The Americans are coming and going. So it is actually a roundabout in history. It is such a fierce terrain and fiercely independent people. Whoever has to come to Afghanistan has to go back. So let that be a fact. And that's exactly what is happening in terms. And so many empires have been lost. It has been nicknamed, as you say, fabled graveyard of empires. All empires have come and dug their graves and gone away. So that is what we are talking. And over a period of time, you see, 79 to 89, the Russians, Then 91 to 95, the civil war. 96 to 2001 is the Taliban chaos, whatever the Islamic Emirate. Thereafter, the US, and now they are leaving. You can imagine just yesterday also, 58 children got killed in an explosion in Kabul in the Siait area. You see the people, how much they have suffered over a period of time again and again. Now, coming to my prognosis of what is going to happen, I really feel I want to be wrong. What I say, I want to be wrong. I wish I was wrong. But my prognosis is very, very pessimistic in times to come. First, let us say which are the four pillars which govern this entire thing. First is the enduring strategic partnership agreement between Obama and Karzai in 2012, where US told for the safety, security, and for the economic sustenance of Afghanistan, US is always there. First pillar. Then second what happened in 2014, the bilateral security agreement. We came into effect on 1st January 2015, where they said, okay, the International Security Assistance Force, we will withdraw. Because in 2010, ISAF, this US and the NATO forces were 100,000, which was reduced, and thereafter they said from 1st January 2015, we'll leave around 8,000, 5,000 NATO and 8,500 US forces, and let's leave. And the combat fighting would be considerably reduced because the Afghan National Security Forces, defense forces, have actually matured over a period of time. This was the second pillar. Then the third most important pillar which happened was on the 29th of February 2020, when there was an agreement between the United States and Taliban directly one-to-one, in which they told in future there will be this area of your country will not be used by any terrorist organization to cause casualties or threaten US or her allies, or the first terms of reference. And thereafter, there were other things that will leave in next 14 months. Then they told UN sanctions against the top Taliban would be removed. And thereafter, intra-Afghan dialogues will commence. And about 7,500 Afghan detainees who were detained in the prisons will be released. And all this was there. And the crux of it is, in future, there is a intra-Afghan dialogue. That is Afghan controlled, Afghan led, Afghan owned dialogue, in order to effect a permanent political settlement without any forces, without any coercion. They themselves say which path the Afghanistans have to take. So this is the third pillar. Fourth pillar is that what happened in the intra-Afghan dialogues. After the February agreement, actually the intra-Afghan dialogues had to take place in March itself for 2020. But delayed. It took place in September 2020. Almost irreconcilable differences. Now, for example, Ashraf Ghani, the National Unity Government, said, first do ceasefire, then we will talk to you, and then see whether what government we can make, a transitory government we'll make. Whereas the Taliban said, nothing doing, no ceasefire. First, we will not take part in any political dispensation of the puppet government of Ashraf Ghani, because we do not believe in a democratic process. Simple as that. So we are not going to take part. What we need is a provisional participatory government with all of us, including Taliban, which we'll discuss in order to have a permanent political settlement, and ceasefire is the last. So, Adi, they have come to irreconcilable differences. Neither of them are talking to each other. With this not talking to each other, and now what is actually Taliban doing? It is running over the defense post of actually capturing one province after the other province. Recently, they captured the Dela Dam, yes, which provided irrigation to entire Kandahar and the water to Kandahar. They had a Ghazni, they ran over the defense post. At Helmand, they ran over a defense post. And now what they want to do is to show their military clout in the intra-Afghan dialogues, to tell the national unity government and all, we are more powerful than you. We have got more area under our control than what you have. And with our military prowess, our clout is greater. And hence, we have a greater share in the future governance of Afghanistan than you. That is the storyline which they want to actually politically divide and isolate Ashraf Ghani's government. That is what you call divide and conquer. They have written letters to all stakeholders whom Ashraf Ghani had actually not considered worthy enough. All the tribal leaders, all the chieftains, even Abdullah has received a letter from what you call Taliban. Please, you join us. Though he is head of the National Reconciliation Commission, he says you join us and we will isolate, politically divide, disintegrate entire this. And then you will join us and we will start an interim participatory government, which will end in a political settlement. Most important thing is they are not believing in what is the famous thing, in the democratic process. So now coming to, with this chaos which is already happening, with the US forces bound to withdraw, actually on 1st May, President Biden, as you told, will be doing on the 20th anniversary on the 11th September, he will vacate all the foreign forces from Afghanistan. Afghan national security forces are really not strong enough, or they are not led properly, that they are able to give an effective answer to the Taliban aggressive designs. Rather, 80 to 120 violent activities are taking place every day for the past 1 year in Afghanistan. You can imagine the toll which the people and the suffering which the people are suffering. This is what is happening. It is entirely chaos. It will be a civil war, which I don't want, because if there is an unruly area in the entire Afghanistan, then the entire other terrorist organization like IS in Khorasan, Islamist State in Khorasan, which is lying latent at this point of time, will merge again. The recent yesterday's Kabul school attack has already been attributed to them, because the atmosphere is conducive. These fellows are fighting amongst themselves. What better area than to start our campaign again? Then what about the Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent? They will also emerge from here. So it is in the interest of the Afghan people that the Taliban, national unity government, all stakeholders, the political elite, and all come together in order to form and find a political settlement to Afghanistan as early as possible. Otherwise, it will end in chaos, confusion, rising of the AQIS, rising of the IS in Khorasan, and this country will go through trauma after trauma. And hence, I only wish what I said is wrong.
It's a scary situation that you're describing, sir, and I really, although there is not much direct contact between us and the Afghani people, but as human beings, your heart kind of goes out for, the general public. I'm sure they don't want this chaos in their place. They just want to live their life, till their farms, take care of their animals, and that's it.
Absolutely. They want to live their life and a life. And one more thing which has been done now, let us say a contribution by the United States of America. They have spent $2 trillion here, lost 2,300 men, lost, injured 20,660 soldiers. But two things what they have done, for which now there will be a big tussle, is the Afghans have got a taste of the democracy. Second, the empowerment of women have taken place. Lakhs and lakhs of girls are attending schools, which is absolutely against even Taliban, who feels girls above 10 should not attend schools. IS Khorasan doesn't want ladies to attend schools at all, children to attend school. And this recent explosion can be attributed to one of them, though Taliban has disowned that we have not done this. The likelihood that IS in Khorasan could have done it.
Hmm. It's interesting, sir. I mean, it's like the bad boy trying to become the monitor of the class, or the principal of the school, for that matter.
Exactly.
So when we look at India's situation, we have our investments there. Today, we are fortunate enough to also have a seat on the big table, which is going to decide whatever is in the power of the civilian, I would say the civilian powers, which are the international forces, to decide for that country. How do you think, do we, firstly, we've got a good relation with the democratic government. There have been talks in the very, very, hush-hush way that we also do have our links with the Taliban, and we can do, business with them. Do you see that happening in the future, that in case these guys do come into power and we would have to deal with them to protect our own interests? Do you think one actually deal with the Taliban, and is it prudent for us to actually do something like that?
Oh, yes, yes, interesting question actually, Adi. Firstly, let me tell, we are on the big table, you said. We are only on the heart of Asia, Istanbul process. There are about 15 countries, donor countries, and about 12 regional organizations. But the last meeting which took place is in 2019. Thereafter, the Istanbul process didn't take place. But these are the main donor countries. Who is actually sustaining 300,000 Afghan National Security Forces? It is these people from outside. So this is an important high table, no doubt, but it is only for supporting in terms of economics, trying to build a CBMs and a consensus on Afghanistan.
Okay.
Now you see so much of waters have flown, gone down the Kabul River. Now we are come to intra-Afghan dialogue, where no other country is involved. It's the Afghans who have to find a solution. Now there was a Troika, what you call extended Troika, a meeting initiated by Russia. About 4 meetings took place in 2019, 2 took place in 2020, and on 18th March this year, the one extended Troika meeting took place. Here we don't have a seat on the high table. This is done by India, by China, USA, Russia, 3 countries, plus Pakistan, plus Afghan national government, plus Afghan Taliban's also representatives attended this, elite in Afghanistan, and observers were Qatar and Turkey. This meeting took place in 18th of March 2021 now. And what was decided is requesting the Taliban to decrease the level of violence, and also told them you should not take part in the spring offensive. Okay? But what happened? Nothing happened. Taliban did not, but the very idea, the Taliban attended a Russian-initiated dialogue itself gives some credibility to Russia that they are able to bring some Taliban representative to the high table. That was the one thing achieved. Now, ultimately, what has to progress is only the intra-Afghan dialogues. Even the next meeting of the intra-Afghan dialogues has not been scheduled. US is leaving, NATO forces are leaving, everything in next couple of months. And your second meeting of the intra-Afghan dialogue has not even started. Now, what should India do? Now, national unity government, we are in good wicket with. The amount of money which we have poured is nearly $3 billion. The amount of goodwill which India has generated amongst the people of Afghanistan is tremendous. Now, the Salma Dam, Indo-Afghanistan Friendship Dam, which was there built near Herat, it provides water to Herat and all the agricultural regions there. And then we have taken over that Shatut Dam we want to build, which will provide water to entire Kabul in times to come. We have already built a road for Iran to Afghanistan connectivity from Zaranj to Dilaram, the circuitous main artery of Afghanistan. About 218 kilometers spent in 600 crore rupees. It was completed in 2009. We have enabled a electric grid line coming from north towards Kabul and brought the Uzbek electricity into Kabul. We have established a grid station there, which on our own. We have helped in education, giving hundreds and hundreds of scholarships, midday meals to the children, and 5 medical centers in 5 major cities are functioning on day-to-day basis, giving solace and medicine to around 30,000 Afghans each day. So the amount of goodwill which India has generated amongst the people, if there is a one Chinese, one Indian, one American, and one Pakistani all go, you can rest assured the general public will hold that Indian in very high esteem in the general public, because our things are reaching the people. The last mile connectivity, our parliament building which we have built, in order to show this is yours. So all this, there's so much of goodwill we have generated amongst the people. Now, Taliban also knows the goodwill which India has generated there. Let there be no doubts. But the only problem is the national unity government, on which we have put our bet upon, would be the weakest link in the intra-Afghan dialogue, because their credibility will only be ensured on the success of Afghan national security forces. If the Afghan national security forces keep on running away from one post after the other and provinces are falling like ripe mangoes into the hands of Taliban, then who is going to listen to these people? So our cloud is only with the people, which is very important. But again, we need to have a friendly government. Having clout only with the people where there may not be a democracy in future is also a question mark. How much of Indian interest will be catered for by the friendly or unfriendly Afghan government which will be formed? So this is a big question. Now, India's dilemma. Now, how have the Afghan Taliban come into governance? Only by military action.
Yes.
By only terrorist action, by killing and causing bloodshed. That Mao's dictum, power grows from the barrel of a gun. So they are using gun everywhere and killing people, whoever are against them, and then running over and destroy and capturing prisoners and killing the Afghan National Security Forces, and then taking a seat in the governance is absolutely dichotomy to the Indian democratic process. There are enough terrorist organizations in India with left-wing extremists and all. They'll say, "Acha, they have come, we'll also do the same." Isn't it? So we cannot support Taliban now at this point of time, though, as you rightly said, some secret parleys can go on. Now I come to a next thought. If the US, one of the greatest democracies, is accepting after Taliban's role in the governance due to their credibility and power, why should we halt? Second, if the Afghan national government and elites have formed together and accept in the political settlement that Taliban will be a part of governance, who are we to protest?
Exactly. Yes.
So we should not feel shy in playing a real geopolitics and see the Indian interest, the national interest, while dealing with Taliban. If after due political processes they come to an understanding that the Taliban will be also in the governance, we should not feel shy at all. We pursue our national interest at absolutely vigor, and as it is, we are doing good to the Afghan people on day-to-day basis. So in the interim, till a political settlement is there, we should continue to do our people-friendly policies. Continue with it. The entire electricity of Kabul, we are doing it from the Uzbek electricity. They have to understand. the electric substation, the drinking waters of Herat province, and number of other day-to-day children's activity. They know that Indian meals are coming there, where augmenting food during the midday meals is also coming. The medical centers, every common man is going to those medical centers. Which is it? India. So we should continue with our policy. And once a political settlement is there, whichever government is in power, which has been agreed, we should be in touch with it and cooperate with them in bringing peace and succor and development to the Afghan people.
Very true, sir. I think one thing that you said stood out completely is that we should not be shy to play a geopolitical role, and it is also our own interest at the end of it that we have to look after. It's not
that
just,
I will tell you during our next year.
Yes, sir.
What is India's interest? We have got a lot of interest there. We will see that in the year subsequently.
Yes, sir. Before we go to India, sir, I'd like to ask you about, I think, everybody's favorite discussion point in India, Pakistan. So is it really in their interest, and they, overtly and covertly support Taliban? They've been saying that it is the national religion and this and that. Whole lot of gambits. I mean, they spin a news story every time they talk about Pakistan, but their support is unwavering for the Taliban, and that is a very, very open factoid. But I'd like to ask you, has Pakistan really thought about what they're doing? Is it really in their interest to actually support the Taliban, considering the fact that if the Taliban actually comes into power, the Pakistani NFWP area and the Pashtuns and this and that, they will lose control over that entire segment. I mean, have they really thought about what they're doing, or is just Pakistan as usual?
Yeah. Now let us see. The Afghan, what is the Pakistan interest? Pakistan feels that Afghanistan is their client state. We are superior. That is our state. They will listen to what we say. They had, after the 91 to 94 civil war, when after the Russians had left away, there was a socialistic regime of Najibullah there. And you know how Najibullah was killed by the Mujahideens and his body was hung on the lamppost in Kabul. And thereafter, there was a absolute chaos and civil war. The Mujahideens, though they were supported by the CIA, by the by the Pakistan, and all the ISI, everyone were supporting, but there was a civil war which no one could control, neither the Pakistan nor US. Thereafter, you have to understand this important critical point. In 95-96, it is the Taliban, Pashtun Taliban, trained by Pakistan, which went in 1 year, within a couple of months, captured the whole of Afghanistan and made a republic, not a republic, it Emirates. And Afghan Emirate was functioning under Taliban, sponsored by Pakistan from 96 to 2001. During the time that Al-Qaeda and all were operative and Al-Qaeda carried out that 9/11 and the US came in. You see the interesting point. So the entire Taliban was created by Pakistan, agreed?
Yes.
It was a baby of Pakistan which went there. Once the Americans came and told these are the people and we have to fight, straight away like a chameleon, Pakistan changed its colors and their own baby, Taliban, they started attacking it. US started giving them logistic support and sealed their borders. So it was actually infanticide which Pakistan was doing to their own baby. So Taliban knows very well they cannot trust Pakistanis. At one point of time, they sponsored us, and we, as their representative, went to Afghanistan, created an emirate which was friendly with Pakistan, and ultimately Pakistan and US slaughtered them. So there is a great distrust between the Pakistani government and the Taliban. on the part of Taliban. But Taliban higher leadership like Akhundzad and all are presently obviously in the Pakistan area. And they are utilizing what we call the present geopolitical situation to their advantage of befriending with Pakistan. And they are utilizing it. Let us put it, they are utilizing it. And also, Pakistan also is getting international recognition of persuading Taliban to come onto the table. That is one thing. The entire, what you call, the US Taliban agreement, Doha agreement, which took place last year, 2020, is also created by Pakistan. Pakistan says we persuaded the Afghan Talibans to come to the table and discuss it with USA. So it has got some recognition from the Taliban side. It has got recognition from the US side. And now they are telling we want peace, we want peace. Huh? Let there be an Afghan process there. Huh? Now let us see what is actually Pakistan wants. Pakistan, this is an old concept, but it is still current now. They want a strategic depth to their country. From our Thar Desert Jaisalmer border, if you go the nearest, the Indus River is around 120 kilometers only.
Yes.
It has a very narrow waist. If you reach the Indus River, you cut Pakistan into the eastern part of Pakistan into right and left, and the Balochistan area across the Indus becomes the third part. So you have already broken it up. So where is our strategic depth? They pursue, Afghanistan will give. Our air forces will go and strike. They will be stationed there. So India cannot strike a third country. We'll turn the flank of India by basing our air forces there. Our terrorist organization, because you may carry out strikes like Balakot strike or surgical strikes, we will place our terrorists there. And then from the Pak-occupied Kashmir, they will come and hit the Kashmir because there is a direct connectivity.
Correct.
So in future, they are also thinking you put their nuclear weapons and nuclear strike capabilities also in Afghanistan. But that is the concept. Whether they will do it or not is a different term. When you talk of they needed a depth for their country, it is to place them. You may destroy certain nuclear assets if there is in the second Sally in Pakistan. But the ones in Afghanistan are intact because they have a friendly power there, a client state there, as far as Pakistan is thinking deep. So our nuclear counter-strike forces would also be there in Afghanistan, which India cannot strike. So when they thought of the defense in depth, when they thought of the strategic depth, this is what they are considering, utilizing Afghanistan and seeing a pliant client. They want it there, client state. We will listen to them. They have got one good reason for it. It's a landlocked. It has got the greatest strategic weakness. Afghanistan is landlocked.
Yes.
All its trade has to come through the Khyber and Bolan passes, the two highways. One is from Kabul, Jalalabad, Peshawar, and then come to Islamabad and Lahore. Other one coming from Kandahar to Quetta, then to what you call Gwadar. So two highways will reach them to the two ports, which only Pakistan can give. So our initiative of Chabahar, which we started very well with a trilateral pact in 2016, when India, Iran, and Afghanistan told that we will liberate Afghanistan from the clutches of Pakistan and give it an alternative route to the Arabian Sea, independent of Pakistan, and strategically unleash it to give it some strategic autonomy. But somehow, we did that road, a portion of 235 road from Jaranj to Dilaram. But thereafter, we did not continue with it. Though there was an agreement, we will develop Chabahar port. Then we told IRCON will lay a railway line from Chabahar to Jahedan. And from Jahedan to Zarangi, another road of 200 odd kilometer will be laid. And thereafter, there is a connectivity of Afghanistan with India through Chabahar. Iran agreed, but somehow, we don't have, Adi, I'm coming back, we don't have a strategic vision. We did not follow it up. Of course, there were certain US sanctions. We could have gone around it by telling them in specifics. Now, recently I've heard that Pakistan, that China has been given the development of Chabahar port because India has delayed over a period of time. And the railway line from Chabahar to Jahedan, Iran is telling we'll do it on our own. See how we have lost out strategic opportunity because we don't have a strategic national security strategy. When you say, Acha, I have to do that, the finance ministry will pitch in. That road and shipping ministry will pitch in, port, and other our port, public sector ports will pitch in for the construction of. All this has not happened because we don't know. Someone has said it and it's gone. So Iran is thinking, you fellows are not doing. So a golden opportunity which we had to liberate Afghanistan from the communication lines, strings, leashes from Pakistan, we could not do it. Though we did, as I told you, a small portion of around 200 odd kilometers road. But we have not done it because this country do not have a strategic vision to get their entire act together and pursue our national interest. So Pakistan is still, whichever government comes in power, till the time you liberate Afghanistan from the two ports, Karachi and border, and give it a third port, Afghanistan will be indebted and will be hostage to Pakistan. You have to understand this. This is a strategic geographical weakness of Pakistan. Then one more thing, which Pakistan is very worried about its contentious 2,096 kilometers of the Durand line. The President Daud Khan had told, no, we don't recognize it. Because in the Treaty of Gundmak in 1879, large portions of southern Afghanistan were taken over by the British Empire and assimilated into the then British India, now Pakistan. The Quetta, the Khurram, Khyber, Sibi, all these provinces were actually the greater Afghanistan, the actual Afghanistan. So we should support the Afghanistan in their quest of getting their territories back of greater Afghanistan, and rightly said by you. The Pashtun areas have to go back to Afghanistan. So this is the leverage, and this is what Pakistan is concerned, a contentious 1893 Durand line, which has not been agreed, and we should be supporting Afghanistan bid for a greater Afghanistan. So Pat, and one more last is, Pakistan is Man Friday to China. It propagates Afghanistan, go to China. China is a great power. If US is not there, China will do it and all. He is that power broker with China. So that's what Pakistan's interest is, in order to keep it as a client state. See that the dependence on the port is there, and then pursue its national interest against India through Afghanistan.
You've got some plans, sir.
Yeah.
But I guess right now Pakistanis should be worried about saving their own country with what is happening inside it, rather than looking at how they can move there.
I know. I know.
aircraft over there. Sir,
I
you mentioned China. One can clearly see the Chinese footsteps in Afghanistan. So that is something which is, you also mentioned that the Pakistanis are kind of deal brokering with the Afghans to look at China. There was also a news that the Taliban, quite a bit of the leadership of Taliban had visited Beijing, met some of the CCP hierarchy and stuff like that. What would have happened is anybody's guess. What do you think? It's not a very strategically important country as far as the location is concerned, not a port access that you mentioned. Well, some amount of mineral wealth, yes. But what is it that the Chinese are looking for in that place? Are they trying to protect their own interests within the CPEC, or they're trying to get a stronger hold towards the Middle East, Iran, so that they can seam up their oil supplies? What is it that they're looking for, sir?
Yes. Firstly, whatever China wants, it is trying to get it done through Pakistan. Let's be fair. That is first. And China is a freeloader country in Afghanistan. What do I mean by freeloader is, there are 5 fellows going for a party. Okay, 3 fellows are paying, and 2 fellows will come and eat well and without paying go. That is called a freeloader. The entire security, the development, the defense forces, that as I told you, US has pulled $2 trillion for the safety and security of people. 29 NATO countries are involved in order to ensure that Afghanistan people's voice is heard, and in order to preserve the nation by giving it aid, support, everything. Where blood is shed, casualties are incurred. But China looks all this, and after all these countries have done it, it comes quietly and does agreements with Afghanistan and goes. So it lavishes on the stability provided by the other country without spending one soldier also in Afghanistan. That is called freeloading country, which China is. Others are providing, it will come. Now, $3 billion they have invested in the Ainat copper mines. And there are other the facilities of mineral resources and all they want to. Actually, tomorrow's gold is copper.
Yes.
So the entire copper mines, they have taken over. And there are also cobalt. There are many other places where they have invested only in the mineral resources. Second, now they want to make it as a continuation of their BRI initiative, Belt and Road Initiative. Now there is if you see the Eastern Wakhan corridor, the total length, common border between China and Afghanistan is only 76 kilometers.
Okay.
Then a long Wakhan corridor is there. Okay. And there are two passes on that. Both the passes are closed by the Chinese. They really don't want access. They are more worried about the Uyghur fundamentalism, which will be filtering into Xinjiang through Pakistan, through Afghanistan, through these IS in Khorasan, AQIS, Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent, whichever are there, they are trained and they are coming into. However, it still taken them in the Belt and Road Initiative because there are a number of roads from Afghanistan leading to the Central Asian Republic.
Yes.
From Herat, 2 roads go into Turkmenistan. Then from Mazar-e-Sharif, a couple of roads go into Uzbekistan. And further to the east from Kunduz, the road directly goes to the Dushanbe, the capital of Tajikistan. And from Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, they are all connected. So his Belt and Road Initiative takes the Central Asian Republic route and comes into Afghanistan in order to exploit the minerals. And thereafter from Afghanistan, it is also easy for it to connect with the maritime Silk Road through Pakistan. Okay. Because there are 2, Jalalabad and Kandahar, the routes are leading into Pakistan.
Pakistan.
So he is forming, in order to exploit the minerals, a road from Central Asian Republic coming into Afghanistan and going into Pakistan. And if that Iran route we made, he will make use of the Iran route as well. And thereafter, from Central Asian Republic to the Caspian Sea, and from the Caspian Sea north, it goes into Europe. A railway line has already gone all the way from China right up to London. They have sent goods. So the Afghanistan resources will be milked in order to utilize the minerals in this entire road and sea connectivity. That is one of their aims. Then third aim is, as I told you already, fundamentalism. They are very worried about the Xinjiang. Xinjiang, that East Turkmenistan Liberation Front, ETLF or ETIM, independent movement, there are a number of organizations which are there. So what better place if Afghanistan is in a chaos and IS in Khorasan and AQ in the Indian subcontinent, all these fellows have really come up in Afghanistan. To go to China from Afghanistan is 2-3 days walk, that's all. Badakhshan province, if you go, it goes into Tajikistan, and from Watan corridor, you can just pour into China under no, because it's not possible. Such a long border can really be sealed. So it is also worried, and it wants stability in Afghanistan. Firstly, to exploit the minerals, and to ensure that the other terrorist organization and training doesn't take place from there. And it is interested in the intra-Afghan dialogues, which will end in a political settlement, and hence a part of the Russian initiative of the expanded Troika that I had mentioned on 18th March, the thing took place, that Russia, US, China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and with the Qatar and Turkey as observers, this particular Troika, it is also a part of it. It is also a part of Heart of Asia. And whatever little things which has to be done in order to influence the future government of Taliban or whichever it comes, Pakistan, their power broker is already there to help them out. So I think they are in a pretty situation where they are not spending much. Latest intelligence report has come. They have made a battalion base in the Watan corridor with the permission of Afghanistan, of course, in order to see the routes are sealed and the terrorists do not come. But the last information what I have given is not verified. It is just an intelligence report.
That's interesting. So, but how does Chinese actually tolerate the Pakistan is doing all sorts of religious-based extremism in that very region where the Chinese have their own interests as well? It's going to be quite a clash. I mean, or is it that the Pakistanis are so smart to keep those guys saying, "Acha yaar, don't go to China. You can go to India, but not there."
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, you are 100% right. The ETIM terrorist and all, Pakistan is very, very skeptical in training them. And even if it trains them, it will be done in Afghanistan. It will not do it on its own soil. So Afghanistan, that they are 20-30 kilometers belt, that on either side of the Durand line might be 50 kilometers on either side, is actually a no man's zone. You can do what you want. If you see Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan against Pakistan is there in Afghanistan. Haqqani network, which is against United States, is there in Pakistan. So I was just thinking, if they are doing this fellow's job and let them change over, these fellows can do what is in Pakistan, they can do telling it in lighter way. So TTP is there based in Afghanistan. Haqqani network against US is based in what you call Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Waziristan, and other that area. So it is a good give and take which they are doing. So there half the things which are happening in the border region is not even under the control of Pakistan. You know that. So many things are happening.
But it's a very funny situation, sir. I mean, they say it's religious. They want jihad and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't have any problem. They can have all their religion that they want to. But here, one also sees the fact that there is a bias. I mean, don't go towards China, boss. वहाँ से पैसा आ रहा है, so just don't do anything there.
Obviously. Otherwise, why are they not criticizing that 1 million fellows who are under quarantine camp
Yeah.
in Xinjiang? 1 million Uyghurs. Not one Muslim nation has raised their voice against China. That's what is their so-called Muslim Brotherhood, which we respect, because there is an entity, whatever. What has happened to that brotherhood now? Why is Turkey, who is supposed to be trying to think of that, amassing all the Muslim countries together, why it is not hearing one voice against China? They are all, there is nothing called as that brotherhood and all. They are all self-interest. National interest, what we want, it's all the money, little sunny. Rich man's jokes are always funny. So that's exactly is happening. Why is Pakistan not raised? It tells about so-called human rights issue in J&K when there is nothing happening. But they will not raise a voice against more than 1 million people who have been absolutely torn away from their families and the so-called re-education camps.
Yeah.
And then they are made to pick up cotton. The Chinese cotton is under cloud. No one wants to buy it.
Yes.
Because it is the quarantine, it is the imprisoned people of Xinjiang, these Uyghurs who are picking up the cotton. So, but why is no Muslim nation telling about it? You just see. Where is your Muslim brotherhood, that Ummah? Where has it gone? So all is ultimately determined by personal interest. What did Kautilya say? Every friendship has got a self-interest. Without self-interest, no friendship is possible. You see how well Chanakya has told it in 300 BC.
It's sad. As a matter of fact, I still remember, I was quite shocked when I heard Imran Khan saying, I haven't heard about the Uyghur problem. So let me just check and come back to you. He actually said that on one of the TV debates. It was quite an amusing sight. And that too with a very straight face. I'm not in awareness of that entire issue.
You imagine.
So, lastly, I'd like you with your vision, with the way that you've explained this entire thing, and it's actually been a pleasure listening to this entire thing, because you've brought it out in a very, very simple way. So one can actually understand actually the situation is nothing. Everybody's just looking after their own interest. Now, my question is, how does India look after their own interest? Because at the end of it, if we've put in time, money, resources, we also have larger interests in Central Asia. One, to counter China, of course, but our own growth and stuff like that. How do you see us, or what would be your recommendations for us to actually do to make sure whatever happens in Taliban, we are where we are?
Good. Absolutely. Thank you. Like I want to tell what our famous Kautilya said. National interest is foremost, and we have to pursue it relentlessly. And in order to pursue our national interest, we have to have strategic goals which will lead to our national interest, which will on fulfilling those goals, our national interest is served. It was in 2011, there was a strategic, a partnership agreement between India and Afghanistan. That we are told we are your partners and strategic partners for education, culture, civil, for the well-being. We did have a very nice agreement with the Karzai, President Karzai at that point of time. Then, as I told you, we have invested a lot in the well-being of the Afghan people. Because Afghan people, our biggest investment is with the Afghan people. as I have told you in my previous talk, how in education, in mine, what you call, we are looking after them in terms of water, in terms of resources, education, electricity, construction of dams, medical centers. Now, our biggest, this one is, we should firstly support a intra-Afghan dialogue. That would be in our interest. And an early political settlement has to come, because if you see, Taliban is of a lesser evil than IS in Khorasan or AQIS, Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent. So even if Taliban comes without due democratic process, Taliban in its ideology is Deobandi ideology, which respects geographical frontiers. It doesn't need to expand outside. They want a Islamic law, that Sharia to be imposed. They don't want a democracy. That is one thing where the political settlement people have to combine together to form a mutually acceptable solution. So they are really not what you call, they are not expansionist in terms of a caliphate, or we have to fight all the Christians and all the Jews and all the Hindus like the Al-Qaeda says. So it is a national, they respect national borders. So if I see the choice, if there is no stability, these two will crop up in this area. It's a mountainous terrain. The Hindu trust comes here. Then Paro-Permissus mountain go further here. Number of the rivers which come, the broken terrain. And also the Pak-Afghan border is one of the most explosive, unruly, and ungoverned borders. We can actually harbor number of terrorist organizations. Tora Bora caves. Everyone thinks Tora Bora caves is right in center of Afghanistan. No, it is just next to Jalalabad. 25 kilometers from Jalalabad on the Pak-Afghan border, that Tora Bora caves is there. From there, he has come to Abbottabad, means less than 200 kilometers as the crow flies, he has come. So it was, so the entire area you have to see is quite a difficult terrain, which will give all the terrain advantage for a terrorist organization if it is not governed properly to crop up. So our first interest is to have a stable, peaceful government. First, we have already continued with the people, that's in the goodwill of the people. Second is invest in the friendly Afghan government. You know the Rajamandala theory of Kautilya. The persons who are very next to you all ought to be your enemies. But the persons who are in the next circle ought to be your friends in order to tackle your enemies from the other side. So that is the Rajamandala theory. As per that, Afghanistan should be our friends, though we have got a direct theoretical land border with Afghanistan. Because of the Pak-occupied Kashmir, it is beyond that. First. Second thing is very vital, important to our national interest. We should activate the western frontiers of Pakistan. How? The Durand line is contentious. Agreed? So we should see that Afghans are putting their regular forces on the Pakistani border with the aim to capture it at some point of time and activate the border and guard and defend their territory and make it an active, like the line of control on the east. They should say the Durand line is a line of control on the west. Because Durand line we do not believe in. We need a greater Afghanistan, and a Pashtun nationalism also is there in us. That will ensure the core of Pakistan, which is located in Kahoot and all that, is pinned down towards the west and is not able to be inducted onto the eastern frontier against India in case of a war with India. Otherwise, the entire core comes as an offensive into Indian territory. The Pakistani Army Corps. To be fair, everyone knows it is the 11th Corps.
Mm.
And even in Quetta, there is the 12 Corps, which is actually looking after the Balochistan border. We should activate the border of Afghanistan so much that 12 Corps is there to second and to give, to be in reserve to any offensive coming from Afghanistan or any trouble coming from Afghanistan. So you have tied down 2 of his corps onto the Western Front. So when we are fighting a two-front battle with China and Pakistan, we should ensure Pakistan also fights a two-front battle with India and Afghanistan. So that will give us a big strategic advantage in the quantum of troops which can be used against us in case of a conflict with Pakistan. That's our national interest.
Mm.
To have a friendly country and support their concept of greater Afghanistan, support the Afghan nationalism
Mm.
with the friendly Afghan government would ensure that we have created an additional front for Pakistan. And third front is already there. There is Balochistan Liberation Front, which is fighting. There is a Sindhi, some organization, terrorist elements for independent movement of Sindh. Something has emerged already. So we should ensure the third front inside, with the Western Front active, and we'll only tackle the Eastern Front. So that is in our national interest, and hence our what you call, we should have a peaceful, stable, friendly Afghanistan in order that we not only pursue the goodwill of their welfare of their people, but they also are able to take care of our sensitivities.
Mm.
If that is the situation, and again the strategic depth or something which the Pakistanis want will not be, Afghanistan will never allow it.
Correct.
If they are they are hostile to them. So the very concept what they are relying on, strategic depth, put their nuclear weapons there, put their air bases there, put their terrorist element there, and then attack India at the time and place of their choosing, seizing a suitable opportunity. All that concept goes for wind. And hence, we should be friendly with Afghanistan in that way. Then ultimately, we should really look after the Afghan people.
Correct.
Afghan peoples have been friendly with us. And now at this point of time, when they are in turmoil and are continue to be in turmoil, all they want is support and solace and succor.
Yeah.
This is the time, notwithstanding which government will come into power in Afghanistan, we should support the intra-Afghan dialogue and continue with our active support to the Afghan people. And lastly, we should renegotiate with Iran for the Chabahar port, that we will do it. We'll develop the port facilities.
Mm.
We'll build a 1,300-kilometer railway line from Chabahar to Jahedan. We will construct the road from Jahedan to Zaranj, and then give an alternative link to Afghanistan for their trade. This, if we have done, we have actually given Afghanistan the strategic autonomy to pursue their national interest, unhindered by the geographical disadvantage which it has been placed.
It's a very interesting way of looking at it. I think one of the most important things that you said, and I personally believe so, is the people connect needs to be there. We need to do good for the people, and the soft power that we've been able to achieve within that country with regards to their training of a lot of their people. They come here and study. We've set up hospitals. We've set up, as a matter of fact, we set up vaccines and stuff like that for them. There are plans of sending even more vaccines to Afghanistan. So I think that soft power quotient needs to be very, very high, because even the Taliban, I don't know if you would agree with me, if the Indian soft power is very strong within Afghanistan, and even if Taliban comes to the helm of, they would not be able to ignore that. I mean, it's impossible to ignore the entire. You can beat them into wearing whatever clothes that you want them, grow their beards and stuff like that, but you can't change their hearts, which is going to be very, very difficult.
Very pertinent point, Adi. Or rather, I missed it upon it. Even they cannot ignore the goodwill which we have generated there. Why? Even President Karzai studied in Simla.
Yes, sir.
And there was a similar connection. So throughout his 13 years tenure, there was always a friendly disposition towards India. So all this soft power and Indian movies are very, very popular there.
I was just about to mention that, sir. Just about to mention that they take a lot of our programming. As a matter of fact, they take part in a lot of the talk shows. They take part in a lot of these, serials and stuff like that. And funny thing is they do speak our language as well. So I think that soft connect needs to be there, and it will go a long way in securing our interests. Apart from that, sir, I think one most important thing that you mentioned is we need to figure out with Iran. We cannot let that entire strategic depth that we've got in that region go to waste. Of course, Trump was a bit this thing, but I think it's now also in our interest to push USA. We've been able to push USA to get done whatever we needed to during this pandemic. I think it's also now in our interest to work towards twisting some nails within the USA to get Iran and US onto a stable platform. One, so that we can trade with Iran, get our oil supplies back at cheaper rates and stuff like that, and get our interest in the Afghan region going. I think I agree with you 100%. There is just no way out of this.
Absolutely. President Biden has also agreed to look at the six-power agreement on nuclear,
yes.
The nuclear, talk which had taken place between the six powers, including Iran, and the sanctions which are imposed. And then US backed out of that agreement.
Yes.
President Biden has told that he is ready to come back into this agreement and look after the interest of Iran. But obviously, it will take some time.
It will absolutely, sir. And I think it's a great opportunity for India to exert its geopolitical power at this point of time.
Absolutely.
It must. I think right now they're a bit busy with the COVID crisis and what's happening back home. But I guess the minute this thing comes down, there has to be very, very concerted efforts that need to be made to securing our interest in that region. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, because there is this new snippet about Afghanistan, some violence or the other. It's really sad. A population cannot go through 40 years of war. It's something which is,
absolutely,
it's not correct, sir. Sir, thank you so much for putting in the time and effort to once study the topic of Afghanistan, and you've really covered it from the historical perspective right down to what the situation is on ground today. It's a really an interesting subject for us as Indians, because at the end of it, I believe there are neighbors, in spite of the fact that I would say, have just about a 15-20 kilometer border with Afghanistan technically, but we do have it. It's an important thing for us to figure out, and thank you so much. I am really thankful to you that you've actually explained it in the way that you've done.
Thank you, Adi.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.